My ex-wife left me for her high school sweetheart, and my daughter said, "I'm not going to mom's anymore." At the custody hearing, she told the judge everything, and when he gave me full custody and ordered her to pay support, she lost it. I was standing in the doorway of my own house in Riverside, California, watching my 14-year-old daughter, Lena, shake so hard she could barely hold her backpack. Behind her, in my driveway, my ex-wife Mara sat in her idling SUV, honking like a maniac. And Lena looked at me with this hollow expression I had never seen on her face before and said, in a voice that didn't sound like hers, "Dad, I'm not going back to mom's. Not ever." I swear I felt my stomach drop straight through the floor. It wasn't the words themselves. It was the dead flat tone. Like she'd hit some kind of breaking point she didn't have the strength to hide anymore. "What happened?" I asked. "Talk to me, sweetheart." She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't fall apart. She just whispered, "I can't be in that house anymore." Before I could respond, Mara jumped out of her SUV and marched up the walkway like she owned the place, yelling loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Evan, get her in the car. She's being dramatic." I stepped between them. "Mara, stop. If she doesn't want to go." "You're turning her against me," she snapped, eyes wide, voice cracking with this sharp, ugly edge I'd never heard before. "Get out of my way." She tried to push past me, but Lena grabbed my sleeve and hid behind me like she was 5 again, like she was scared of her own mother. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. "Mara," I said as calmly as I could, "we're handling this legally. I'm not forcing her into a car." She laughed. This cold, bitter laugh that didn't sound human. Then leaned in close enough that I could smell the mint gum she always chewed when she lied. "You have no idea what you're inviting onto yourself, Evan." And then she stormed back to the car and peeled out so fast she almost hit the mailbox. I locked the door behind her. Lena sank onto the couch and hugged her knees. She looked small, fragile, like she'd aged years in the last month. "Dad," she said quietly, "there's stuff I haven't told you yet. Stuff about Mom. Stuff about him." "Him?" I asked. She nodded, hesitated, and then said the name like it physically hurt. "Reed." I froze. Reed wasn't just her new boyfriend. He was Mara's high school sweetheart. The guy she always insisted was just an old friend. The guy who moved back to town around the same time our marriage fell apart. The guy she swore she'd barely spoken to in over 15 years. But the way Lena said his name, shaky, anxious, looking over her shoulder like he might somehow appear in our living room, that was new. That was wrong. "What about Reed?" I asked. Lena opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "I've seen things. Stuff Mom told me never to repeat. Stuff she said would destroy our family if I ever told you." My chest went tight. "What things?" I asked. Lena stared at me, and in that moment she looked terrified. Not of getting in trouble, but of the truth itself. "Dad," she said, barely audible, "Mom wasn't the only one cheating." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She took a shaking breath. "Mom was meeting up with him way before the divorce. But that's not what scared me. It was what I found in Reed's house during one of the overnight visits. It's why I'm not going back." She paused, swallowed hard, and then she said, "Dad, I think Reed is hiding something. Something about me." I felt my pulse spike. "What did you find?" She looked straight into my eyes, her voice cracking. "A folder with my name on it. Before everything blew apart, before my daughter was scared to step inside her mother's house, before a custody hearing turned into a battlefield, our life looked normal from the outside. Boring, even. The kind of suburban normal people envy until they realize how easy it is to fake. I'm Evan Calder, 38, born and raised in Riverside. IT manager. The guy who grills on Sundays and forgets to fold laundry until it's wrinkled beyond saving. I married Mara when we were both 24. She was sharp, gorgeous, loud in that way that makes people think she's the life of every room. And for a long time I thought I hit the jackpot. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. Or at least I thought we were. We had Lena 2 years into the marriage. From the second she was born, She was the kind of kid who watched everything. The kind who noticed the door closing a little too hard. The kind who could tell when a smile wasn't real. Looking back, she probably sensed the shift long before I did. The first sign was subtle: Mara's phone. She used to leave it everywhere. The kitchen counter, the bathroom, the passenger seat. Then, around last year, she started carrying it like it was an organ she couldn't live without. Screen always flipped down. Password suddenly changed. Notifications turned off. I asked once, offhand, "Work getting crazy?" She shrugged and said, "Just organizing things." Which, in hindsight, was technically true. She was organizing an affair. Then there were the late nights. The girls' nights. The sudden gym obsession even though she hated sweating. The way she'd come home smelling like cologne she claimed belonged to a coworker's husband. I kept trying to rationalize it. People change. People go through phases. People hit rough patches after 15 years together. But then Reed Carson came back to town. She told me 2 weeks after he moved back that she'd run into him at the grocery store. I remember exactly how she said it. Too casual, too light, like she'd practiced the tone beforehand. "Reed? From high school?" I said. "Slicing vegetables for dinner." "Yeah," she replied, barely containing some spark in her eyes. "He looks different now, like he grew up." I didn't think much of it then. Why would I? High school was almost 2 decades ago. Life had moved on. Except, it hadn't. Not for her. Within weeks, she was dropping his name more often. "Oh, Reed said this. Reed recommended that. Reed knows a great contractor. Reed, like he'd always been part of our life." When the divorce hit 8 months ago, she framed it like we grew apart. Like it was mutual. Like nobody was at fault. I didn't fight her. I just wanted peace for Lena. We settled quick. She got her car and half the savings. I kept the house. Week on, week off custody. And for the first couple months, it worked. But then Lena started coming home from Mara's place quieter than usual. Not upset, just dulled. Like something was draining her from the inside. I asked a few times if everything was okay. She always said yes, but she said it too quickly, too calmly. Kids lie like that when they think the truth will break something. I didn't push. I should have. Then one Friday she came home almost jittery. She forgot shoes in her mom's car. She forgot her sketchbook. She forgot to breathe, I think. Mara texted me later that night saying Lena was being moody and needed stricter discipline. Something felt off. Off enough that I started checking in with Lena more deliberately. Off enough that I noticed how she jumped whenever her phone buzzed. Off enough that I realized she was scared to be alone in a room. But I didn't know why. Not until the night she refused to go back and whispered the words that changed everything. "Dad, Reed has a folder with my name on it." And that was the moment I stopped believing this was just a messy divorce. Something deeper was happening. Something darker. And I had no idea how bad it was about to get. After Lena told me about the folder, she shut down. She wrapped her arms around herself like she was holding in something that physically hurt. I didn't push, not yet. I just sat beside her on the couch while she picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "I need you to tell me what you saw." She shook her head. "I can't. Not all of it. Not yet." "Did he ever touch you?" I asked, heart hammering. "No. Nothing like that." She looked at me sharply, making sure I understood. "It wasn't that. It was different. Creepy. But not like that." Relief hit me, but only for a split second, because the fear in her voice wasn't minor fear. It was the kind of fear kids feel when they've seen an adult cross a boundary so subtle and wrong that they don't even have the words for it. "Okay," I said. "Then tell me what you can." She tugged her knees to her chest. "Mom had me stay over at Reed's place for a weekend. She said she needed time to sort out the house." Which I thought was weird, but whatever. Which made sense. Mara had moved in with him so fast it felt like she'd always had her bags packed. "The first night," Lena continued, "I couldn't sleep. His house is quiet. Too quiet. And his office door was open a crack. When I walked past, I heard him typing. Typing what? I don't know. But he stopped the second I got close. Like he was listening. A chill crawled down my spine. The next morning, Mom sent me to his office to ask if he wanted breakfast. But the door wasn't closed all the way, so I kind of peeked. She hesitated, eyes watering. And that's when I saw the folder with my name on it. On his desk. Like, printed on a label. Did you open it? I asked. A little. Just enough to see what was inside. She wiped her nose on her sleeve. Dad, it was pictures. Of me. I froze. What kind of pictures? Normal ones. But ones I never knew someone took. Me walking to school. Me at soccer practice. Me sitting in Mom's backyard doing homework. Me getting off the bus. From far away. Like someone was following me. Dozens of them. My hands went numb. And there were notes, she whispered. Dates, times, stuff like prefers to sit near the window. Usually alone after school. Keeps distance from mother. Like he was studying me. I felt sick, horrified, furious. And when I closed it, she continued, he was standing behind me. My head snapped toward her. What did he do? He didn't get mad. He didn't yell. He just smiled, like he caught me doing something cute. Then he told me that some people need structure, and that he was helping Mom make sure I was on the right path. I tried to tell Mom, but she said Reed was trying to be supportive. She said I was being dramatic. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Mom said if I told you, the court would take me away from her forever. She said you'd freak out and make everything worse. And I didn't want you guys to fight more. I closed my eyes. Mara had weaponized fear. Against our own daughter. That night, after Lena fell asleep on the couch, I went into my office and shut the door. I spent 3 straight hours printing every text, every voicemail, every weird message from Mara's boyfriend. I called my lawyer the next morning. I told her everything, every word. She didn't even let me finish before she said, Evan, this is no longer just a custody issue. This is a safety issue. Meanwhile, Mara's behavior started spiraling. Angry texts, middle-of-the-night calls, accusations that Lena was brainwashed, unstable, performing. And then came the worst one. You're going to regret turning her against the only family she has left. Only family? I didn't understand what she meant. Yet, but Lena did. She went pale when she read that message over my shoulder. Then she whispered, Dad, Mom didn't tell you everything about Reed. When Lena said that, Mom didn't tell you everything about Reed. Her whole body stiffened, like she was bracing for impact. And the way she looked at me wasn't scared of Reed. She was scared of what I was about to find out. I sat down beside her. Tell me, I said. Right now. She swallowed hard. Mom told me something the night we stayed at Reed's. She made me promise not to repeat it. Ever. I felt my jaw tighten. Lena, whatever she told you, it doesn't apply anymore. She nodded slowly. I know, but you're going to be mad. I'm already mad, I said. Just not at you. She took a deep breath. Dad, Reed isn't just some guy Mom used to date. I raised an eyebrow. I know that. No, she whispered. I mean, he was around more than you think. Even before you and Mom started fighting. I froze. What do you mean? She picked at her cuticles until they turned red. Mom told me something the night she asked me to keep the affair a secret. She said Reed had been checking in on us for years. Not just recently. The room started spinning. Years, I repeated. What does that even mean? She said they reconnected way before he moved back. Like 2, maybe 3 years ago. My chest tightened. She told you that? Yeah, Lena whispered. She said he was helping her plan for the future, and that I needed to be open to him being part of our family because he always cared about us. The words made my skin crawl. What else? I asked. Lena wiped her eyes. Mom said Reed knew things about me because he likes to keep track of what's important. My blood turned cold. She said that. Yes, she whispered. And, Dad, remember when my bike went missing 2 years ago? The one Mom said someone probably stole from the school bike rack. Yeah, you cried for 2 nights. Well, her voice shook. Mom told me Reed took it to see how I'd handle unexpected changes. She thought it was funny, said it showed him I was resilient. I felt myself go completely still. He stole your bike, I repeated. To test you? Yeah. And she thought that was okay? She said he just wanted to understand me better. I wanted to punch a wall. I wanted to drive to Reed's house and set it on fire. But I kept my voice steady as I asked, why didn't you tell me? Because Mom said you'd ruin everything if you knew. That you'd explode, call the police, and then the court would think you were unstable. She said Reed was protecting us and you'd make him leave. Every single word hit like a knife. Protecting us. Tracking us. Testing my kid. What else did she say? I pressed. Lena hesitated so long I almost asked again. Then she whispered. She said Reed was helping her figure out how to get sole custody. My heart stopped. What? She said you're too emotionally reactive, and she needed someone steady like Reed as a father figure for me. She said Reed had experience dealing with kids who are hard to manage. I felt sick. You're not hard to manage. I know, she whispered. But Mom said every girl my age needs structure. That Reed understands boundaries. That he studies people. Seriously studies them. The word studies made something click in my brain. My lawyer's warning. The typed notes in the folder. The schedule tracking. The pictures. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't even a custody tug-of-war. This was something darker. The final hit came when Lena looked up at me with tears in her eyes and said, "And Dad," before she made me leave the room that night. Mom said something really weird. What did she say? She told me that Reed was the one who convinced her to finally leave you. She said he'd been waiting for the right moment, and that he promised her everything would be easier once I lived with them full-time. My blood ran ice cold. Why would he want that? I asked. Lena's voice cracked. That's what scares me, because when I asked Mom the same thing, she smiled really weird and said, because Reed always wanted a daughter. After Lena told me that Reed always wanted a daughter, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not fear, something sharper, colder. The part of me that wakes up when my kid is threatened. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with every light off, my laptop open, my phone beside me, and a notepad filled with bullet points that looked like the start of a police interrogation. At 3 a.m., I wrote at the top of the page, "This is no longer about divorce. This is protection." I started listing everything Lena had told me, every red flag, every timeline inconsistency, every message from Mara that suddenly made new, horrific sense. The picture was uglier than I thought. Reed didn't just walk into our lives a year ago. He'd been circling long before that, watching, tracking, preparing, like a hawk that pretends to be harmless until it lands on your shoulder. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Marissa Kane, a woman who had the calm, steady voice of someone who had seen every form of disaster and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Marissa," I said, "I need to talk to you in person. Today." I drove to her office at 10 a.m. Lena stayed with my sister, who didn't ask questions, just hugged her and set out pancakes. Marissa listened as I explained everything: Reed's folder, the photos, the stolen bike, the notes, the manipulation. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she folded her hands on her desk like she was about to deliver a verdict. "Evan," she said, "this is bad, very bad, not just for custody. This could constitute unlawful surveillance, coercion, possibly even premeditated custodial interference." "I want him nowhere near my daughter," I said. "You'll get that," she replied. "But we need to do this strategically. If we accuse them outright, Mara will panic. She'll hide evidence. Reed will delete everything. We need them relaxed until the court hearing." I clenched my jaw. "You're telling me to act normal?" "Yes," she said. "Document everything. Respond politely. Do not show anger. We need Reed to believe he's still in control." That was the hardest part. Pretending. For the next week, I became an actor. Mara sent a dozen manipulative texts a day. I responded with one-word answers. Reed sent another weird message from a new account. "Kids need strong guidance. Don't undermine ours. I didn't reply. Sent it straight to Marissa. Meanwhile, Lena stayed glued to my side. She refused to sleep in her room alone. She jumped whenever headlights shone through the window. She asked if Reed could show up here if he wanted to. No, I said. He can't come near this house. But I didn't believe that completely, so I bought outdoor cameras. 4 of them. Installed them that night, even though it was cold and my hands were shaking. I also called a child therapist I trusted. Lena started sessions immediately. She told the therapist everything she was willing to tell me, and more. 2 days later, the therapist pulled me aside after a session. Your daughter is scared of that man in a very specific way, she said quietly. Not random fear, pattern-based fear. She believes he studies her. She's right, I whispered. The therapist nodded grimly. Document everything. Do not let her out of your sight during pickup and drop-off. Mara is extremely enmeshed with this man. That is dangerous. Dangerous. Finally, someone else said it. The temporary custody hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Marissa warned me, Mara might panic. Reed might escalate. I want you prepared. So I spent the weekend building a fortress around my daughter, emotionally, physically, legally. I had every document organized, every screenshot labeled, every timeline printed. I hadn't been this focused in years. But even with all the preparation, all the planning, all the quiet rage in my chest, I still wasn't ready for what happened the night before the hearing. Because that was the night Mara showed up at my house unannounced. Pounding on the door, wild-eyed, shaking, begging to see Lena one last time before things change. And behind her, half hidden in the shadows at the edge of my driveway, stood Reed, watching, not moving, not blinking, like he was waiting for something to happen. The moment I saw Reed standing at the edge of my driveway, half swallowed by the dark, every instinct in my body screamed to get Lena as far away from him as possible. He wasn't moving. He wasn't speaking. He didn't even look at Mara, who was still banging on my door like she was trying to break it down. He was only watching my house, watching us. I stepped outside, pulling the door almost shut behind me so Lena wouldn't hear. Mara, I said, you need to go home, now. She was shaking, not crying, not angry, shaking like someone terrified of her own shadow. Her mascara had streaked under her eyes, and her hair looked like she'd been yanking on it. You don't understand, she whispered. You don't understand what you're doing. Then explain it, I said. I can't, she said, voice cracking. I just need to talk to her. Please, just for a minute, he said. She cut herself off so fast it made my stomach twist. He said what? I demanded. She swallowed hard. Nothing. Just let me see her. No, I said. Not tonight. She grabbed my arm with icy fingers. Please, Evan. You're going to make it worse. Before I could respond, a low, steady voice drifted from the edge of the driveway. Mara, Reed said calmly. We should go. His tone wasn't angry. It wasn't irritated. It was instructional, like he was reminding her of rules she'd broken before. She flinched. Actually flinched. Then she backed away from me and turned toward him like she was answering a summons. But before she left, she looked up at me with this hollow expression that made my skin crawl. You don't know the full story, she whispered. You think I'm the only one who lied, but you don't know what he knows. You don't know what he has. What does he have, Mara? She hesitated, and that hesitation was the first real sign that this entire situation was so much worse than I understood. Then she said the words that didn't make sense until later. He's not going to let this end with a custody ruling. A cold wave hit me. What do you mean? She opened her mouth, then turned her head sharply toward Reed, as if she was scared he'd overhear. He hadn't moved, but there was this awful sense that he was listening to every breath. Just keep her away from windows, she whispered, and don't let her walk to school alone. My blood ran ice cold. Mara, I said, lowering my voice. Is Lena in danger? Tears pooled in her eyes. We all are. I stepped closer. Tell me what he's done. She shook her head wildly. I can't. He said if I talk, he'll. Her voice broke off as Reed began walking toward us. Slow, silent, deliberate. Mara went rigid. I stepped between them. That's close enough, I said. Reed stopped about 10 feet away, the porch light catching just enough of his face to show a tight, polite smile that chilled me to the bone. This is an emotional night for everyone, he said gently. Mara's overwhelmed. She just wants her family to stay together. Family? I spat. You're not part of this family. He tilted his head like he was studying the words. Then he said something I still hear in my sleep. Oh, Evan. You don't realize it yet, but I've been part of this family longer than you think. Before I could react, Mara grabbed Reed's arm, not like a loving partner, but the way someone grabs the wrist of a person about to walk into traffic. A frantic, desperate anchor. Reed, she said shakily. We should go. Please, let's go. He didn't look at her. He looked at me, and he smiled. A calm, almost tender smile. We'll see you tomorrow at the hearing, he said. Big day. Then he turned and walked down my driveway with Mara trailing behind him like a prisoner on an invisible leash. I locked the door, double-locked it. When I turned around, Lena was standing halfway down the stairs, white as paper. Dad? She whispered. I heard him. It's okay. I lied. No, she said, shaking her head. Dad. He's been watching us for longer than I told you. What do you mean? Her voice cracked. Because when he smiled just now, I remembered something. What, sweetheart? She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. I've seen that smile before. Years ago, when I was 9, at the park. My breath caught. And Dad, that day I got lost? She whispered. He was the man who found me. When Lena told me that Reed was the man who found her at the park years ago, the memory slammed into me so hard my knees almost buckled. She was 9. We were at Arlington Heights Park. I let her run ahead to the swings while I grabbed water from the vending machine. When I came back, she was gone. We searched for 10 minutes that felt like 10 hours. Then suddenly she appeared, holding the hand of some man I assumed was another parent. A man I couldn't remember the face of because panic wiped out everything except relief. A man who said, "She was looking for you. Kids wander." I thanked him and never thought of him again. Until now. I sat down slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear my own voice when I said, Lena? You're sure it was him? She nodded, fists clenched so tight her knuckles were white. It's the same smile. I remember thinking he looked proud, like he did something good. But I didn't know why. The room spun, but I stayed calm for her sake. Sweetheart, tell me everything you remember from that day. She swallowed hard. I went to the swings. Then someone called my name. Your name. I repeated. Yes, not loud. Quiet like he already knew me. I thought it was you at first, so I turned. And he was standing near the trees. He said you were looking for me. He said he'd take me to you. My blood turned to ice. He knew your name back then, I said. Yes, she whispered. But at the time I thought maybe he heard you say it at the park. But now, Dad, what if he already knew who I was? I didn't answer, because I was already thinking the same thing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and waiting for morning like a man waiting for a verdict. Before the hearing, Marissa pulled me aside and said, whatever happens, stay composed. But the hearing wasn't the real nightmare. The real nightmare came after, when the judge recessed for lunch. Because that's when Mara approached me in the hallway, alone. Her face looked drained, her eyes red, her hands trembling. Evan, she whispered, please just listen. I'm not talking to you without my lawyer, I said. It's not about the case, she said. It's about him. I paused. Mara, what did he do? She leaned in close, her voice barely audible. You're right about Reed. Everything your daughter said. It's worse than that. I held my breath. She continued. When Reed and I reconnected, he wasn't interested in me. Not really. He made it seem like we had this old connection. like fate brought us back together. But he was obsessed with Lena. Long before he ever met her. My pulse spiked. You're telling me he... Mara shook her head fast. No, not like that. It's not sexual. It's something else. Something I don't understand. Something calculated. Then what does he want? I demanded. She looked up at me with terrified eyes. He wants a family he can shape. He said some people are blank canvases. That kids are easier to rewrite than adults. He said I was weak, that you were stubborn, but Lena, she was pliant. He said she'd be easier to rebuild. My stomach lurched. Mara, I said quietly. You let this man around our daughter. I didn't know, she cried. I swear. Evan, I didn't know at first. He's charming. He's patient. He says all the right things. But when he gets angry, it's cold, controlled, like he's disappointed in a broken tool. My skin crawled. Why didn't you leave him? I snapped. Her eyes filled with tears. Because I tried. And he told me he'd take Lena anyway. I froze. What? He said he's waited too long. He said Lena is meant for him emotionally, mentally. That he understands her better than we do. That he's the only one who can guide her into being who she's supposed to be. A chill tore through my spine. And the worst part? Mara whispered. What? He didn't fall in love with me. He studied me, used me, just to get to her. She looked down at her shaking hands. He said I was the easiest doorway. I stared at her like I was seeing her for the first time. Not as my ex-wife, but as someone else's puppet. Someone trapped. Then she looked up and said the words that made my blood boil. Evan? He picked us. We weren't random. He chose our family years ago. I walked back into that courtroom after lunch like a man carrying a lit fuse. My lawyer looked at me, eyes sharp, immediately sensing something had changed. Stay calm, she whispered. I am calm, I said, and I was too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before the storm hits. The judge returned. Everyone took their seats. Mara stared at the table, hands shaking. Reed sat beside her, posture perfect, expression soft and reassuring. Like he thought he still had control. He didn't. Marissa stood. Your Honor, before we continue, my client has additional evidence that directly impacts the child's safety. Reed stiffened. Mara's face blanched. The judge nodded. Proceed. Marissa handed the judge a folder, my copy of the timeline, the texts, Lena's therapist's notes, the screenshots, the photos of Reed's stalker-level messages, the evidence Mara had indirectly confirmed in the hallway. Then she dropped the bomb. We also request the court consider testimony from the mother, who privately admitted to my client that her partner has engaged in sustained surveillance and coercive behavior toward the minor child with explicit long-term intent. The judge's eyes snapped toward Mara. Mrs. Calder, is this true? The courtroom went dead silent. Reed calmly placed a hand over Mara's on the table. That was his mistake. She ripped her hand away like his touch burned her. And she cracked. Yes, she choked out. It's true. All of it. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I should have protected her. Reed stood up so fast his chair screeched. Mara, he said quietly, dangerously, stop. But she didn't. He studied my daughter. He tracked her for years. It wasn't about me. It was never about me. He wanted her under his control. Reed lunged like he was going to grab her arm. Two bailiffs were on him instantly. The room erupted. The judge slammed her gavel. Enough! Reed's calm mask shattered. His eyes burned into me. Not with anger, but with something colder. Possessive. Delusional. She needs structure, he spat. You're ruining her potential. You always were. Get him out of my courtroom, the judge ordered. As they dragged him away, he twisted back toward Lena, who sat in the back row beside my sister, shaking but standing tall. I'm not finished, he hissed. But he was, because in that moment all his power evaporated. The judge turned to Mara next. Mrs. Calder, your failure to protect your daughter constitutes severe parental endangerment. Effective immediately, custody is granted solely to Mr. Calder. You will have supervised visitation only, subject to a full psychological evaluation and ongoing review. Mara sobbed into her hands. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed again, for the first time in months. When we left the courthouse, Lena grabbed my arm with both hands, holding on like she was anchoring herself. Is it over? She whispered. Yeah, I said softly. It's over. But it wasn't the words that mattered. It was the way her shoulders finally relaxed. The way she looked up at the sky instead of the ground. The way she took a real, full breath. We spent the next few weeks reinforcing everything Reed tried to tear down. Therapy, normal routines, quiet nights, laughter slowly returning. Cameras stayed up, locks replaced, but the fear faded, and the bond between me and Lena became unbreakable. A month later, she handed me an envelope I didn't recognize. What's this? I asked. My own idea, she said shyly. Closure. Inside was every drawing she'd made during those dark months. Sketches of Reed's house, scribbled notes saying, I don't feel safe. Pictures of her hiding behind fences and corners. She looked up at me. I don't need them anymore. We burned them in a fire pit together, page by page. As the last paper curled into ash, she leaned against me and whispered, Thanks for choosing me. I always will, I said, and I meant it. Because revenge didn't come from rage or violence or courtroom victories. Revenge came from taking back our life and making sure Reed never had a single piece of it ever again. When the fire went out, Lena brushed soot off her hands and smirked a little, for the first time in forever. Guess he didn't study that part, she said. My chest tightened with pride. No, I said. He didn't study strength.